Hi, my name is Malgosia Turzanska, and I'm the costume designer of Hamnet. I speak 3 languages. I speak Polish, Czech, and English. And I do not entirely know my height in inches, so I am 165 centimeters tall. You're listening to How We Roll.
That's the best answer I've ever received. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Thank you. You nailed that.
When it comes to working in entertainment, there's a lot of hows, and they all boil down to how we navigate this wild industry. While how we follow our dreams is uncertain, how we roll along the way is in our hands. Welcome to How We Roll, a podcast for actors by casting networks.
Well, Malgosia, thank you so much for taking the time out of your whirlwind season to be here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
As I already have told you multiple times, and it's been maybe 2 minutes before we started recording, I am a huge admirer of your work. Congratulations on, overall, the Oscar nomination for Hamnet. It is so deeply deserved by you and your team.
Thank you so much. And yes, on behalf of my phenomenal team, thank you.
Well, I love that you share the credit there because as you will know soon when I just keep complimenting you for an hour, it is deserved, like I said. So Hamnet, to me, it feels both poetic, intimate, and handmade. What does it feel like, first of all, just before we get into things, to now celebrate something so intimate on a massive scale?
Honestly, it is. I'm so glad you bring this up because this, I've seen the movie now, I think 7 times. And so I've seen it with very different audiences in a few different countries.
How do you have eyeballs? My tears would have just dried my eyes out. I would be passed away.
It still absolutely 100% affects me. But what has been the most incredible aspect of this whole time has been watching people continually leave their cynicism at the door and open themselves up to the movie and let the movie in and let it hurt them and let it take them on the journey and sort of come out at the other side and do it along with the audience with a crowd of strangers, which is so beautiful to me and so powerful. Yeah. And so truly, yes, it was a very intimate and very magical time when we made the movie, but to see it affecting people on such a deeply personal and human level, it is absolutely astonishing. And every time I go to a Q&A, when we see people leaving, when the credits come up and we see people come back to reality from seeing the movie, it is absolutely the most powerful thing.
Oh, I'm sure. I've seen a lot of before and after TikToks of people without puffy eyes and then puffy red eyes, which I now am a part of that club. And before we get even more down the Hamnet rabbit hole here, before this fanfare, one of the questions that we want to start asking this season, just to set the scene for our guest, is what was your very first job in the entertainment industry?
So, this is interesting because I started in theater, actually.
Oh.
I started in theater, and I'm trying to think because I went to a theater design school in Prague, a school called DAMU, and FAMU is the famous film school there. And so I would do shorts with the students at DAMU, and I'm trying to figure out what was the first one.
I love that you started in the theater.
I think not because I wanted to, very honestly, because I had to, because you couldn't do, in that program, you had to go through the bachelor's degree through theater design in order to do masters in film. But by the time I got to my masters, I moved to New York. So I did the rest of my school at Tisch at NYU. But I think the first short that I did was about Alice from Alice in Wonderland, and it was a little bit of there was Alice and there was her family, her actual family, having a picnic, and suddenly things started getting a little bit magical, and it was so exciting. And we shot outside in this beautiful garden in Prague, and it was beautiful.
That is magical. And now you're making movie magic overall. But it's funny that you mentioned theater because I could see Hamnet as a beautiful Broadway play. Sort of the stillness of it and the richness, and just to be in the front row and see your beautiful designs up close would just be insanely amazing. As I told you, I just watched Hamnet. I wanted to wait until right before we talked.
Amazing.
I had a screener. I watched it on the train, which watch it on the big screen if you can. I'm going to try and do that too. Don't watch it on the train because you will be a train wreck. I recommend the movie, but not watching it on the train. I was crying. I looked like I was not okay in just a corner by myself by the window, just staring out the window, like literally heaving. So I think what you said before, to me, stories like this and films like this are part of the answer, I think, to try and uniting this world. Because
Yes.
it's sort of
Yeah.
that in a microcosm. And I heard it all began because you read the book and you fell in love with the book, right?
Exactly. That's exactly it. And then I found out that Chloe was adapting it, and I just, I was desperate to throw my name into the hat.
And Chloe was a fellow student of yours that you almost crossed paths with,
Yes.
more specifically at NYU. But I love that you fought for yourself. And I think as creatives in general, we have to do that, but it's a fine line, right? So what's your advice on that front?
Well, so this is actually, it came from Sandy Powell, whom I have never met in person, but I absolutely love her design aesthetic, and she is, just a super talent. And I read an interview with her where she said that she decided to write a letter to Derek Jarman and told him that she absolutely must work with him. And it worked. And I was like, okay, this is what I shall do.
Yeah.
And so, so I saw years and years ago, I saw David Lowery's short called Pioneer, which to this day is one of my favorite films.
Wow, I'm gonna check it out.
And it's delicious. And I decided to just, whatever I could do, I wanted to get in touch with him, and I found his email somewhere. And so I just started emailing him, and then we made a movie together. A few years later, we made a movie called Ain't Them Body Saints, and then Green Knight, and we're friends, and I'm so thrilled for he has a new movie coming out very soon.
Yeah.
And so it worked.
Wow. Yeah. Sort of taking the chance and being vulnerable. Yeah. Vulnerable
Yes.
is a huge ingredient just to
Yeah.
any
But
art.
it basically, I feel like if you truly, honestly are responding to someone's work, you need to let them know, because we're working very hard. All the film industry is a complicated and heavy industry to be in for various reasons. And so if you see something that touches you, whether it's the costumes or sets or the direction or whatever it is, and you have the ability to reach out and tell someone, you did something that touched me, just do it. Why not? Whatever comes out of it, you let them know that it worked. And we have, as artists, we have so many doubts and self-doubts. And so to hear that something worked is incredible.
Yeah, it's so true to hear you say that, because I think as a non-costume designer, the only thing I tend to design costume-wise are little Judge Judy's on my shoulders, trying to get in my head. And I say, hey, we're not going to be here today. But I see parallels already in what you just shared, because you've talked so much about how this story and project started with emotion, and that was how you and Chloe and the rest of the team were really aligned. And on this podcast, we always talk about building characters for actors, which starts with that. So from that perspective, I'd love to hear sort of the psychology behind how you craft a human through clothing.
Yeah, I think if you start from the inside out, if you create this emotional skeleton for yourself, then no matter where you move, what period you move into, it's going to ring true, because you already know what the emotional value of it is. And so I always try to start that way, because I find it more helpful and more just true, just more honest. And so when I started, it was just a book. We didn't have the script yet. And so the lookbook that I made was, it was my response to the text, and it was mostly through color and texture. And there was a lot of nature, since Agnes is so deeply connected to the forest, to just so organic. And so there was a lot of kind of organic woodsy textures. There was a lot of plant life. There was blood, there was, fleshiness. And then on the other side with Will's character, there was a little bit more of restraint and kind of a little bit more of silence. And then using the period, I did have some period imagery already in this lookbook, where normally I don't really do that, but here it helped to connect the shapes and the slashes of Elizabethan and Tudor clothing into his character and just kind of showing these silent screams growing throughout the movie.
Mm.
And so it was a lot of that. It was mostly like textures and temperatures and
Mm.
yeah.
The two T's, textures and temperatures. I like that. Well, how long did you sort of live in that world of research? I know you love research, and as an actor, I really enjoy that part too. What was that phase like specifically for Hamnet?
So I started because we didn't know initially. I didn't know when the movie was going to happen. So I started
Mm.
the summer before. I think I was already doing a little bit of research, and so I had a chance to go to museums and get into books, and just start getting a little bit more familiar with the era. But then I started another movie. I did Train Dreams right before we went
What a
to
year for you.
it was truly it's insane.
What a train dream. I'm a train wreck. You're a train dream. Here we go.
Exactly. But while I was in Spokane, while we were shooting Train Dreams, I didn't have access to museums, so it was just books, and it was research through the internet. But at least I could get my hands on certain things and get my head in the game and like make sure that
Mm.
I was literate in the fashion lexicon of the time, that I was not coming into it just completely clueless.
Mm.
But the second I got to London, I started going to see the real clothing and museums and galleries and so on, to just kind of get as much as I could. But it was a good few months that I had to actually start living in that time, which
Yeah.
was very helpful.
Well, you mentioned lexicon. Now I'm curious, is there a word or a specific type of garment or a phrase that you just found really cool and you're going to keep with you from that research, like that you didn't know, maybe that you discovered?
I had no idea about a lot of it. So,
Mm.
the bodice was actually called the bodies, which is hard to say. As already, I'm a Polish person with an accent, so I don't use it in interviews because I think it's just going to sound strange. But the
They
bodies
can
is
make you
a
sound smarter. Some of us can't speak more than one language. Yeah.
but points as the little ties that used to connect, because the clothing was so very, very modular, and so you could connect things with pins, or you could connect things with ties. And the
Mm.
ties with the little metal aglets were called points. So that's something that I didn't know. And then a jerkin, a doublet, all these things.
Wow.
A penner, the little container for ink and a quill that you could have slung
Oh.
for your belt, which we used on Will. So yeah, there was a lot of cool little words that
Yeah.
will stay in my vocabulary.
It's also fascinating. I feel like from every project, you almost need a shelf of curiosities or something
Oh,
that you take with you. I'm always wondering how much of a character's design is sort of fully formed before you meet the actor. On this movie, it really centers on two very incredible actors, Jessie and
Yeah.
Paul. So I'm wondering, when you're dealing with performers like that on that level, how much wiggle room is there? How much collaboration?
There's always collaboration, and that's the best part, because
Mm.
they bring so much physicality and life to it that I have to listen. I have to know what they feel. And so here, when we started, Jessie actually did send me and Nicole and Fiona, Nicole Stafford, our hair and makeup designer, and Fiona Crombie, our production designer. Jessie would send us images, songs very often, just
Mm.
bits and bobs that she found for some reason meaningful, even though maybe she didn't know entirely why something was speaking to her. And
Hmm.
so we already had, we had this dialogue going. So when she came in, we had a little bit of a shorthand already. We were familiar with one another. And also, once I had sketches, I shared them both with Jessie and with Paul. They were aware of where I'm headed. And
Hmm.
so there's time for, if there's any like super red flags or something that seems very, very wrong, I always try to leave that space to be like, oh, this might not work. Um, so yeah, just
Yeah.
trying to establish that dialogue. You don't always have that opportunity, because people also work on movies back to back, and
Mm.
sometimes there's no mental space
Yeah.
to be in, in prep while you're still shooting. And actually, it was really interesting with Jessie because she was actually on Maggie Gyllenhaal's The Bride. And
Mm.
so when she came in to us, she was bleached blonde with black nails and gigantic energy.
Oh my God.
And she had to kind of like figure out how to carve Agnes out of this.
Yeah, that makes sense that it would sort of be too a lot in the wardrobe room because
Yeah.
from what I know, it gets sort of very almost therapy like sometimes I hear in
Yeah.
fittings especially. And I'd love to just dissect actor fittings with you for a moment because I love them and I feel like they're not usually talked about too in depth. Is it's usually, I think, an actor's sort of first exposure to the world and their
Yeah.
new on-set family, especially day players. It's like you go right to the fitting, that's your first thing. Do you think about fittings as sort of setting any tone for the process as a
Yeah,
leader? Is that something you think about?
definitely. And we always try to have some music. So
Mm.
if the actors send us music, we usually have that, to try to capture what they were already looking into.
Oh, that's so
If
cool.
not, it's period music or, something that is somehow connected to the era to just kind of get you into the atmosphere of the
Mm.
piece and kind of make it easier to switch out your mind from the outside world. We also have, we have sketches, we have like character boards on the wall so you can see the world around you. Sometimes like on this one we had little bits of moss and
Mm.
rocks and little bits of wood just to you know just bring a little bit of the set in. um
That's incredible.
and then it's just kind of letting, sometimes it's hard because you struggle with time. You have a finite amount of time, and especially to begin with, it never works that way that you like put something on and it's perfect, or very, very rarely. And
Mm.
also with these things where we're building all the costumes, so you often have a mock-up of something and then a swatch of dyed piece of fabric, so you have
Mm.
to use your imagination, kind of let yourself explore and play. And yeah, without the actor being open to it, it's not possible.
Yeah.
So we are just partners in it.
Well, looking at that partnership and that openness, do you have any advice for actors on approaching fittings overall? Is there anything you think actors can do to make your job easier and their job easier?
I think sending initial, communicating, but
Mm.
without sending like a shirt or this pair of pants. It's not that. If you send a feeling or, something that helps understand the way you are imagining this person.
Mm.
It's not an object necessarily. I mean, it could be an object, but don't try to see the end before we all know where we're going.
Mm.
And it's the same thing with, not everything is going to fit. Not everything is going to work, the things that we put on. It's kind of like when you're getting ready for a party and, you usually try on several outfits, or at
Mhm.
least um, and you tweak something, fold something. So you
Yeah.
have to be open to exploring and just, turning things a little bit inside out and seeing like, well, what if we do this? So it's just not trying to prejudge the situation, but just being open and just playing.
Which is just great wisdom for life in general
Yeah.
too, Malgosia.
Yeah.
I mean, okay. So that collaboration on Hamnet specifically was with Jessie Buckley and Paul Mescal. I mean, just two incredible
Yeah.
talents as Agnes and Shakespeare. So stunning. And what I just was blown away by was the visual arcs you created that
Hmm.
were so tangible, I think, for viewers, but not in any sort of obvious or sort of in your face way. And yet you could take it away more so than a lot of movies that I've seen. So what was it like working with them on these arcs?
So it was just making sure that I'm not in the way and that I'm not saying things for them,
Mhm.
that I am creating something that helps to tell the story and that helps let the audience in a little bit. I wanted to make sure that I'm not being overly decorative or doing things that seem cool, that like Yes, of course it looks cool. There's like there's bits from the Tudor fashion that are incredible, but
I wanted Shakespeare's vest, the gray one that he wears in the beginning. I was like, can I get that?
but the thing is that this story is so subtle.
Hmm.
It's incredibly powerful, but it's because it starts speaking very, very quietly, and you don't want to overpower anything. And so I was just editing everything down and making sure that it was stripped of anything that was unnecessary
Hmm.
and just carried the emotional load in like the fewest possible words, so to speak.
Kind of like kill your darlings, which is advice for writers.
Yeah, no, total. It's just, or Coco Chanel, like
Yeah.
before you leave, take one thing off, or whatever she said,
That's
just
what I tried to
yeah.
say that to myself when I was making my question list for you, but I definitely have enough questions for like 3 hours, so buckle up. No, I'm going to try and keep it in the time frame. So this film, it really centers on grief. I don't need to tell you that, and that's why I was a train wreck. The ultimate wound, and in studying your costumes and researching you, which was super fun, and I'm just going to keep doing it after this, and probably every day because you're just so incredible. Aesthetically, I could see, and I've heard you talk about this, the stages of not only grief, but a wound in
Yeah.
Jessie's wardrobe, specifically from that sort of like auburn red color, fiery color to then like scabbing over. How
Yeah,
much of the arc, I guess to just break this down more specifically, are you talking about prior to actually dressing them on set? Like, is it ever evolving throughout the process? You said you
definitely.
kept editing it, but just
Yeah,
from a
it
storytelling.
definitely evolves, but it basically, when I always sketch before, before we start building the costumes, so I have something to share with the director, with the DP, and with the actors. And it just became very, very apparent that, and we talked about blood actually with Chloe and with Jessie. And so it
Hmm.
just became very apparent that this is going to be the language of her, of her costume arc. And then, we start kind of vibrant, then it goes, when she starts having children, it goes more, I just try to call it the blood slows down.
Hmm.
It's more rusty, it's just a little bit heavier. And then when she loses Hamnet, it turns into the scab, as you mentioned, the purples, prunes, very cool browns, grays. And then when she goes to the globe, she gets a little bit of that blood circulating back. So we see the vibrancy slowly seeping
Hmm.
back in. And then with Will, the arc was the idea of the wound was there very much as well, but it was a little bit different.
Hmm.
There were several ways we went about this. One was starting with the character of John, Will's father, who
Hmm.
is a very violent man, and we keep witnessing him kind of taking these jabs and aggressions towards Will. And I found out that during the era, a lot of people wore toothpicks as a decorative item on their necklaces.
Hmm.
And so we made this necklace for John, which the toothpick was a very kind of claw-like, nasty, violent shape. And I was imagining he takes it and like jabs and cuts
Hmm.
physically into Will. And so we started with these scratches on him, that then grew into the Elizabethan slashes, which is called pinking,
Hmm.
which are, as I mentioned, this is a traditional um, fashion of the period, but we used it here to create these wounds, like actually literal wounds
Yeah.
that then grow and end finally on the cracked clay moment, when he is the ghost in Hamlet. But there was an idea of the wound and also of this like little silent scream, since he
Hmm.
had no ability to express himself the way that Agnes did.
Hmm.
Her emotions are very, she has easiness of accessing her emotions, whereas he buried them deeper, and it
Yeah.
took a longer period of time for him to actually get to the point that he gets to at the very, very, very end of the play.
Yeah, I was just scrolling through my questions here because I had one exactly about that. I mean, I don't have to go down a rabbit hole here, but my little brother Thomas passed away when we were little, and I saw, thank you, and I saw this movie play out almost between my parents. I saw how people grieving differently can really drive them to separate or ping pong. And I just appreciated that being displayed on film in such a way. And I wonder for you, I mean, there's so much grief. It's like then Will's grieving the loss of the father he could have been, because he probably could have been
Yeah.
a better dad than his own
Yeah.
father was. And so I guess what was it like for you to sort of display that contrast in you're not only creating different arcs for them, but you're trying to make sure that they're shown as completely different people.
Yeah. And this is with actors like this.
Yeah.
Very honestly, I have very little to do.
Yeah.
They are brilliant, and
They're
they
so
they
good.
put so much thought into it. And thank you for sharing this about your brother, and I'm so sorry. And
Thank
while
you.
we were shooting, my own dad passed away, and so I had myself as a case study a little bit of like, what am I doing with it? How am I processing my emotions? And so the movie was very informative for me, and I was informative for my take on the movie. So it was a weirdly symbiotic moment.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
But thank you. But everyone, there were other crew members who were going through loss or through just family very, very sad situations. And so I think we all put our own feelings into the movie, and we kind of tried to help the movie by helping ourselves.
It's
I
so
think.
healing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it worked.
Seeing
I think it
the
worked.
community at the end, the Globe, the crowd at the Globe, and feeling, being surrounded by this filmmaking village, it just was something quite incredible.
I can't wait to get there. That's one of my favorite scenes I think I've ever seen on screen. As someone who's gotten to go to the Globe and experience that, I just felt like I was back there again, and on so many other levels, But before we get there, I'm wondering, even just looking at Will's family versus Agnes's, which is a bit more colorful in garment. Will's is very monochromatic, and you've talked about how it was a camouflage because none of them wanted to maybe stick out to the father who was abusive. And then Will also, I believe there was something with the real William Shakespeare's favorite ink in one of his costumes. I mean,
most of the costumes.
in most of the costumes. Okay.
Well,
So,
yeah.
well, I just want to know. I mean, I kept writing down the same question over and over. Is like, how much of this psychology and process do the actors actually know before they film? Like, how much do they have in there? Because they have so much already going on in their brain that I imagine you can't tell them everything. But I also imagine that would be so helpful.
Yeah, so the ink definitely, we talked a lot about it with Paul. He wanted to have ink stains on his clothing, on his fingers, that came from him. And also the fact that, I mentioned the penner, the little container for quill and the inkwell. And normally in the era, men would have, even in addition to that, you would have a dagger. And he was like, I do not need a dagger. All I need is this, this is my weapon. This is my object. And so he was definitely deeply involved in that. But finding that ink and like having access to that, we just diluted it, and the different grays that it created, that informed that gray scale that he is. After the initial blues and greens that we see him in, he goes more into a grayscale. So that was from that. But he was very excited that, we had access to it. And of course, like in London, you can buy anything. So it was a really, really cool thing to have.
At Harrods alone, right? They say you can buy everything from a pin to an elephant. I forget what the phrase is, but well, now we have Amazon too. But anyway, this is not an ad for that. I'd love to hear of any more secrets like this that maybe are in the costumes that the camera might not see, but the actors do know are there. Those are some of my favorite things to hear about.
So the first one is when we see Agnes wake up in the first shot when she's asleep at the base of a tree, the bodies that she wears, it's made of bark cloth, so she is literally wearing a tree while being asleep at the tree, which that was something that felt like an important moment, even though it is
cool.
absolutely not period correct, but it felt correct to our, authentic to our little story.
And you said it kind of kept coming undone a little bit too, right?
It like not even undone. It just like the fibers would start like having a life of its own, of their. And then another one of those things is for the globe characters, which I think you want to talk about the globe later, so maybe
we'll
I won't.
definitely get there, but you talk about whatever you want. We'll reverse, we'll go to the right, we'll go to the left, we'll drive all over.
So maybe I'll start with Agnes's family, actually. So, or not her step family. So her stepmother is actually, I love those costumes very much. They are the most vibrant in the film, but it was, I tried looking at the natural dyes of the era, and so we were playing with the different dye swatches, and I've worked with natural dyes before, but I've never worked with weld. And weld looks very innocent, a little innocent plant, and produces this incredibly vibrant bile yellow that was so unsettling and so like you couldn't turn away. And so I was like, this is Joan. She's like so filled with bile. And so we use that on her sleeves, actually. So there's a little bit of weld, and then there's the color of the underside of it is weld mixed with indigo. So it creates kind of nasty-ish green, and then she has some pink on. So she is, she's trying to have all these colors on, but it does not cover her real character. And I love that we had, I thought this was gonna get pulled in the end. That would be too bright, but it isn't.
Yeah. No, that's phenomenal. I mean, sort of the othering that colors can create on screen. I also felt like the stepmother, correct me if I'm wrong, but almost had she had all the colors of her children. The girls had similar colors, the boys did, but then no one shared with
Agnes.
Agnes, sorry.
Yeah.
And
No, exactly.
so I almost said Anne Hathaway, which is a different Shakespeare thing. But yeah, I felt like that. And then the scene where she's wandering around the town and she's just popping in her red. I mean, the way that actors sort of don't need to do that work, like the way you can physically just show that with a costume is like storytelling right there. I mean, it's storytelling with colors. Sorry, this sounds so obvious, but when you get, I can't stop complimenting you. When you get on a set, one thing I was really, really curious about is the partnership between you and actors, in the sense of if an actor wants a shirt unbuttoned in a scene, if they want to roll up their sleeves, there's the whole pregnant montage where she kind of has this interesting shape on her belly because it's tied open and then it kind of rips open. It's like, is that just whatever serves the story best?
100%. And I want the actors to have full ownership of the costume and feel like they are not, what's the word? Encumbered?
Like confined?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So they need to be able to move freely, and they need to be able to like how the story develops, and it feels like you have to take something off or roll up your sleeves and so on. And especially with Will, the way he embodied his costume, it made it look so modern and so alive that you never feel like this is a man from a 16th century like stiff portrait. He was living, breathing, and able to move and dynamic. And so that's very important to me, that they feel comfortable just living in it.
Yeah. I mean, when you picture William Shakespeare, we all see maybe that same poster that was hanging up in our English classroom or literature classroom, and it's not that. I mean, I don't even think Will's name is used until very late in the movie.
At the very end. Yeah, just that very end, yeah.
So you forget who it is. I forgot it was William Shakespeare, which I think is probably the point.
That was the goal. Yeah.
Yeah, which is incredible. I wonder, from him, you've given some examples, but even to Hamnet, I think Hamnet's wearing sort of a flower crown at one point, and then the kids have these fun Macbeth costumes.
Yeah.
Were there any elements that the actors actually helped you make or put together?
That's a good question. Well, so Emily Watson's character, Mary, she had this whole backstory about Catholicism and being a secret Catholic. And so she is wearing a pomander on her on a chain around her waist. So it's a little egg that would have, a little bit of perfume in it. So you could spread a nice scent around you. But she started using it. She was like, oh, this is interesting. Maybe this is my rosary. And so in
Ah.
moments, in tough moments, she would hold on to it and she would use it kind of secretly as a rosary, which I really, really loved. And I would
Hmm.
have never come up with that. It never would have crossed my mind. So that was really beautiful. And
Yeah.
then let's see what else was like that. We had the kids play with gloves from the father's workshop. And so there's one scene where they're saying goodbye to Will as he's leaving to London, and they have those gloves on like a little string on their necks, and they're
Mhm.
they're playing with them a little bit, which was really cute.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, the metaphor of gloves too, that wasn't
yeah.
lost on me, and that's a whole other rabbit hole. But spoiler alert, I think we've already said it. In Hamnet's death scene, I'm sure everybody knows that by now, there's a black fabric placed over the lens. And I just wondered, did you have any involvement in sort of sourcing or conceptualizing that fabric?
So actually, that fabric, that texture is the backdrop of the theater. It is
Oh.
shot through that, and that's actually a beautiful story because it wasn't in the shot didn't look like that in the original plan. And the DP, Łukasz Żal and Chloe were, they were talking around the camera, and they saw our amazing stills photographer, Agata Grzybowska, shooting through the scrim of the backdrop, and they were like,
Mm.
"Wait a second." So that's where it came from, and so that
Wow.
is that is that is the backdrop. Yeah.
Such a beautiful moment. And then, of course, we touched on their reaction to their son passing away, the difference in the grief. And I think the
Yeah.
question I was dancing around and looking for before was, I guess, how did you approach this and even just the overall film and other work you've done with texture, with weight, with restriction, with looseness? How does that sort of come into play? Not just the arc of the designs, but sort of saying like, okay, if we make the fabric heavier, like the actor will feel heaviness. I mean, I don't know.
So that is a good question. And so, for example, with Emily's character, she starts so stiff and buttoned up, and as she's
Mm.
going through the story, she is losing a little bit, like we see more into her. And
Yeah.
so, and we talked about it, and she, when we see her at the twins birth scene, she is more open. But when we see her in the Hamnet death scene, she is the most uncovered, and we actually see kind of into her. We see her flesh, we see her breathing, we see her sweat, and I thought it was such a beautiful shift from
Yeah.
being kind of covered up. um but here, this was Agnes was such an animal, like such a creature, so connected to her emotions, and truly we didn't know on the day where she was going to go.
Mm.
So it was, nobody, I don't think anyone was encumbered by the clothing kind of specifically and had to break out, other than the final moment with Paul covered in that clay sheet, which was,
Mm.
like that was like physically heavy, and he had to get out of it and wash it off his face.
Incredible. Well, we're there. I mean, the final Globe Theater sequence that you shot, I think, toward the end of filming as
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
from the groundlings, who I think were considered smelly, talk about like scents and smells, to the upper crust balcony attendees, to then the players on stage. It's such an epic moment
Yeah.
for this intimate film, especially. And I wonder what it was like for you to sort of have this joyful final challenge of creating an ecosystem, basically.
It was just phenomenal. It was a blessing that we did it at the very, very end, because what it meant is we had 350 extras there.
Mm.
We could continue fitting them throughout the whole shoot. And if something was not right, we could make other things, dye things, we could make them look as good as they needed to look, and as real and as complete. Since we have Agnes and Bartholomew kind of walk through the crowd, and we never knew where they're going to be. It's not like you have like the best dressed people around them and then, the
Mm.
ones who have finished in the back. This was not possible here. So we had to make sure that truly everyone was tip top, which
Mm.
worked beautifully. And then same with the players. That was honestly maybe my favorite part of it, because it was, at this point we had all the other costumes were made and established, and And it was just a beautiful jump to something else. And it
Mm.
almost felt like for my whole team, like we were suddenly doing the school play for the end of the school year, you know. It was a
Mm.
different language. It was just a different task, and I really
Yeah.
loved it. And so in the truly in the time, the players on the stage would be wearing pretty much the same as the people in the audience.
Mm.
The costumes would have been donated by the benefactors. So the people in the audience would kind of recognize themselves on stage in these
Mm.
stories, which does not work for us as as an audience through the
Yeah.
silver screen. So my goal was to create something that was um, kind of halfway between them and now, them and us, and then and now. And so
Mm.
we went with the Elizabethan shapes. And here was the moment that we could play with it, just explode it a little bit. But we made them out of raw linen and then painted them with latex paint, which definitely not a not a historical true moment here. Definitely poetic license, but I think it made it work because it created something that is not that, like, to me it would be believable to see it in a theater today. It, like, I
Mm.
understand that this is a theater costume, but also it created this beautiful way of looking at the artistic process and the fact that this is the first time this play is being presented.
Mm.
It's not yet, fossilized in any way.
Mm.
It's new. It's being thought up as we see it. So those the raw brush strokes, the sort of unfinished aspect of it was very important to me. And then taking that language further and putting it onto the Hamlet and Hamnet duality, and having Will kind of, I imagine that he created this memory of Hamnet and then put it in this very, very simplified way onto the character of Hamlet with the paint,
Mm.
that resembles the colors of Hamlet's clothing, including the hair, the painted hair. That this was Nicole, our brilliant hair and makeup designer. This was her idea, and it just kind of gelled and created its own language. And I absolutely loved working on the globe. And the
Yeah.
globe is also, we built the globe. Fiona and her team built the globe, and there's a scene where you see it being built, and the actors building the globe are the actual construction guys that
Oh,
we
cool.
so we had so much fun. And also Chloe is in the globe
I
among
was
the
going to ask you, I saw a picture of Chloe being fitted for something.
exactly. So that she was in the middle of the balcony. Um,
Wow. So we can
So
spot her.
it just felt, we were at that point, everyone was friends, we loved each other, and just making this final production, it just felt so beautiful and so right,
Mm. Yeah. And is that something in looking at these, I think you said almost 300 background players and
50.
I mean and so I wonder, are you just sort of balancing textures and colors and sort of saying, okay, I just want to evenly have it. So on the day, if there's too much of this there, we can shift
Yeah,
that. Is that sort of how that
yeah,
works?
100%. And we had our AD team were also
Mm.
in costumes, so they were in the crowd and they could
Oh,
communicate, so you could, like, from the monitor, you could be like, oh, there's too much, too much yellow here, or, so it was, yeah, there were many people in costumes.
okay.
And yeah, I think people from the art department as well, who had, props and stuff. So yeah, we dressed a lot of people.
Okay, I wonder, this is a very nitty-gritty question, but as far as this might not be your department because I know it's sound, but do you ever have to design or alter something for an actor's mic pack?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, we
Okay.
always have to think about it, and you want it to be especially if it's the same costume worn over and over again. You want it to be as seamless as possible.
Mm.
So we often will stitch in little pockets, just so it's so it's convenient. So
Yeah.
yes, we work with the sound department a lot.
Okay, that's very cool. Because I know sometimes on films, like they'll try and avoid it or have booms or whatever it is, but I just think it's very creative, another creative outlet that you have. So
Totally.
we asked our lovely Casting Network's Instagram followers for some questions, and I had so many for you that I'm just going to squeeze in one. I'm sorry, everybody. This question is from @JustLinton.
Mhm.
They asked, what aspects of any of these costumes do you feel yourself in? which I thought was
Whew, that
interesting.
is a beautiful question. I think, that is such a beautiful question, and I
I thought
don't
so too.
exactly know how to answer it. I think I am in all of them, really.
Hmm.
I am, because I felt so deeply connected to the text and to Chloe and to our characters that I think I am truly in all of them. And because I painted the globe costumes myself, at least most of them, it's my handiwork is there, my dirty hands are in there. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, I think all of more in this than in any other film that I've designed.
Mm. Well, you mentioned the text, and I'm wondering full circle here from reading and falling in love with the book to now having this beautiful finished product on film. Is there one character or costume or something you envisioned while reading it that you think has landed its way on screen?
I think it was Agnes. I think
Okay.
Agnes was, even though she changed quite a lot, because the first time we see her in the book, when Will sees her for the first time, she is wearing men's clothing.
Mm.
So that was a big switch. Whereas here, she is just absolutely 100% who she is. And I think for us in the movie, it worked better.
Mm.
But her essence, I think, was so strong, and it remained that exact essence throughout the movie.
Mm.
So yeah.
Okay, well, speaking of essences, as we wrap up Hamnet here for a bit, although I loved it so much, waiting for the sequel, JK, I don't think there should be a sequel. You've worked with extraordinary actors, obviously like Jessie and Paul and everyone we've just been speaking of. Nicole Kidman, I mean, is in there, the cast of Stranger Things, if I look at your whole career. What qualities or essences do you think great ones like these have in common? Have you noticed something amongst actors that you value?
Yeah, I think it's being open to
Mm.
the process, and also not putting your own vanity into play and kind of putting that aside. That has been incredibly, I feel incredibly lucky that these, stunning performers all don't care about the way, if they look pretty or not pretty. They care about being correct for the character. And so
Mm.
that is something that, you just kind of channel the character rather than think about the vanity side of things. And that is something that is really just really beautiful.
Yeah, and I know it's an art sort of to making it, giving it that messy look and those textures, but do you ever have actors sort of help you run in the mud and get these things
Yes,
done themselves?
yes, yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Well, I would be very mad at myself, and please, you don't have to indulge me, but if I didn't ask you one question about Stranger Things, because I'm a big Stranger Things fan, can I? Do you mind?
Yes.
Is there another episode come? No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to ask you that. I don't think. Season 1. Okay, so that was a very different show from what I hear because there was not really a budget. But is there a favorite design Easter egg, going back to those secrets from that show that you think
Yes,
fans would
there is.
appreciate?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's Lucas's character there was a moment where everyone was gearing up, and we saw this first time he put on his bandana, and he had
Mm.
the little military tool belt. And I found this tool belt in Utah in an antique shop. And when I turned it inside out, it said Lucas inside it. And so
What?
when I brought it over, everyone was like, "Oh my God."
That's wild. Meant to
So
be.
yes, this is meant to be.
Wow. Have you had more moments like that, I guess, where you find these items and then the stories come out or it relates to the story somehow, or someone emails you and is like, oh, I saw my little egg perfume thing in Hamnet. No, I don't know. But anything like that?
Nothing that I'm sure it has happened, but nothing
Okay.
comes to mind right now. But this one was like, everyone just got chills. I just
Oh my
remember
goodness.
Caleb's face going like,
That is so cool. And I just think you are so cool. I admire you so much. And
Thank
before
you.
we kind of wrap up our time together, we always like to end with a gotten or a given. So the best piece of advice you have either gotten or that you have to give for people in this crazy Wild West industry.
I will repeat the Sandy Powell, which is not an advice that she gave me, but I took it as an advice.
Yeah.
And the piece of advice is to reach out to people and let them know how you feel about their work.
Mm.
And if you feel strongly about someone, just let them know that they touched you. And I 100% also think that you should give compliments to people. If you see someone who's wearing, looking particularly cool, let them know. That might
Yeah.
change their day.
I think that's beautiful. Kindness. I never give compliments. No, I haven't given 87,000 to you, and I'm not going to give you one more right here when I just say, in that same vein, I admire your work so much, and I was blown away by this film aesthetically, the storytelling that you achieved, and I think it's changed, but I do think to some extent a lot of people don't realize that costume design is one of, if not the hardest job sometimes on a film set, because in this world of AI and technology, it's really one of the last handmade things we have left.
Thank you for saying that. And today is our Costume Designers Guild celebration. So I am so excited to get to celebrate my colleagues and friends. And yeah, I feel like we have such a beautiful community here. And it is, what is the phrase, tide raises all boats. So we have been supporting each other and sharing, and we are stronger together. And so I cannot wait to see everyone.
Well, I love that. I wish you the best of luck tonight on all the awards. I mean, there's just a few to name. Congratulations. And thank you for this time helping me heal a little bit with Hamnet. And the next time we talk, I'm just going to call you and say, what do I wear for this audition? Can you help me break this down?
Anytime.
Just kidding.
Anytime.
I'm not going to do that. No, but thank you so much, Malgosia.
Lovely. Have a fantastic day.